My teachings, people have taught me, great people, fascinating people. The journey has been on and on. But every time I come across, I find who is the ultimate of nature? The ultimate of nature is man. His ability to comprehend. He's not away from nature. He is the ultimate of nature. That is what has been kept on pushing me, pushing me. Then something else happened during my process of working with. This is from Mises' influence. Today, I had a beautiful thing came from Mises' office. That boy won a phenomenal award again. It looks very much in the thing. That's why the influence of Ayn Rand also entered. Technology, art, science, the fusion. Then I realized architecture is a journey. It is not something you finish, which is like nature. It never finishes. It is an evolving process. As these projects go on, each project teaches you something more to get on to the next project. And each stone and each clay block, each thing teaches you something to go on. But every time somebody says, are you a natural architect? Are you a nature architect? I said, I'm neither a natural architect nor a nature's architect. Nature teaches me, but without technology, I couldn't touch nature. What is technology? Is the big question that keeps asking by the youngsters that keep looking at you. Then it happens that something has happened in your mind. The mind. Where does the mind come from? Yes, even animals and things have the main mind and the brain, but they act within certain parameters of their lifestyle. They can't change it. Very accidentally sometimes, but that is always not working. But the most fascinating thing about the human mind is he thinks. If he doesn't think, he doesn't even belong to this. Like this Rishi Valley school that had just modern thing, teaching this school children how to build using local labor, local things, about 30 years old, pushing it together. Cow dung, thatching roof, painting by the local artisans, and all these things worked. I find, are they natural? Yes, they are natural to their environment, but they also have to learn. They had to learn, like this aerospace engineer, from one end we shift to another end. The aerospace engineer also looks at you and looks at the octopus and says, that's why I showed you the shell and the beginning, the octopus. So how is the octopus? It's the most fascinating structure, which is again nature. Nature teaches you in many ways, but nature teaches you in the sense it doesn't come and teach. It is there. It lives there. It's up to you to go and look at it, to study it, to understand it, and then take it to a step forward because your brain, your mind works. Whereas with a bird or an animal, it just reacts, responds, and moves along to its maybe the future, maybe the death, maybe another generation, something happens. They live with their environment. Whereas the human being alone is a natural being of different characteristics. He can change what is before him, what is going to be after him, but he can't change what was before him, what is after him, what is with him. But when he changes that, he has to understand the nature of things. Like I look at the crystals which were used for the roofing, white feldspar. It was the nature that looked at me and I looked at it and why can't I use it? Technology and past engineering said no. I said, that is not nature. We have to look at the material and say, who has studied you? Why has anybody studied you? Then you look at a plant that has got fingers, like today it's a fascinating structure that people build. That teaches you the people on the lake look at the, what we call the tamarind or the big flowers that still grows in the water. That is part, it grows in the dirty water. Nature teaches you again very clearly, there is no such thing as dirt. It's a question of how you look at nature. When people ask for Vastu Shastra or patterns which create in their minds, you work with them and say, we will create an organic space for you. Now I'm using another word, the organic space. What is organic space? When I looked at myself and said organic, does it mean moving around smoothly, but with tremendous geometry, with tremendous mathematics and calculations happening with us? Is it the challenge? But then I look back at my own past and say, who influenced me more? In the beginning, it was me, Swendra. where the curves would only come maximum within the building, never outside. It was fascinating to see him look at buildings as simple lines. The minimum is what you used to call them. The minimum it is, it is. But then I looked at nature. When I looked outside my window here and outside this window here, the combination of diversity really hits me. It really hits me to a point. This is when I start subtly differing from the Western concept of architecture, where they are very disciplined. If one fellow builds house A, next fellow builds A, the whole housing colony is a repetition of same type of housing. But when you come to India, when you come to the subcontinent, when you go down, you see the variety that happens. Yes, it's absolute chaos in the beginning. But if you start studying the chaos, then you look at nature. Nature smiles and just only the gardener makes us orderly. Even with the gardener, nature fights each rose flowers where it wants, when it wants. The gardener cuts it and puts it in a pot. Then the next fellow comes, the landscape man, the other person who understands the environment. The environmentalist looks at the garden. So what are you doing with those flowers in the pot? You shouldn't. You should let nature grow. But people have this tendency to overcome and hold on. When we did something like this yoga center, we said we'll make a discipline and push it into the water so that they can have water yoga, transmission yoga, whatever they want. But when I used the roof material, it was fascinating because it had to be acoustic. And I found the best acoustic materials were gunny sacks and other things which are very simple to achieve. Each of the people who had come did some artwork in this on their own. And the cobwebs taught me how to do the structure on top. The cobwebs are phenomenal structure. If you build it in the real scale, you just can't break cobweb. But the human mind can conquer it, learn from it, and start using. When I see stones being thrown out, when something is thrown out, is it natural or unnatural? When glass, the most modern of materials, fits with old stone and says, we merge, we are not separate. Who is the older, the glass or the stone there? I sometimes wonder. When railway sleepers were thrown away and when you start bringing them together and create sunlight moving into the house, the sun looks at you, as she was saying, the elements and the senses have to play all the time, continuously. Because when elements and the senses play, they are nature. They're 100% nature. But the human being alone has the ability to play with nature. This is when I start saying, what is unnatural? But it really hits me sometimes to look at what is unnatural. Understanding nature or not understanding nature? What is not understanding nature? Because the moment you start not understanding nature, nature very softly punishes you. It is happening now, right now. We did not understand it. And it's punishing us in a very different way, in a very subtle way to say, learn, correct yourself. Is it natural to happen? But when architecture comes, architecture is perhaps to me is the most fascinating subject of all the professions in the world. The most disciplined profession, work with total indiscipline or undiscipline, whatever you might call it. That is the order to disorder, disorder to order. When you start fusing them, what do you see? It's nature. But when you look at nature again, you put a mango seed. A mango seed will grow only a mango tree. You put a mango seed even inside some other tree, it'll still grow through as a mango seed. You can put some whatever people call in that type of life. But the fact is, the human being has the ability to look at that and say, can I change it? The challenge of change is part of the human being's process. It is now I bought another word called process. It's very important because to me, in my practice, the last 50 plus years, I've never found something that's completed. The moment somebody says, have you completed the house or have you crossed your journey? I said, I don't know. I just look at it and say, when will it end? When will it end? No, it'll never end. It teaches you, leaves change you. But we humans can make, when the later shadows fall, the rectilinear formats are very human thought process. But when I started looking at certain flowers in the Suvida jungle walking, there are hardcore rectilinear flowers and plants, which shocked me and surprised me. There is tremendous geometry in that. Then I was walking with my great friend Alapareddy the other day for looking around plants. He smiled at me and said, look at the tower, high-rise tower. I said, so where is the high-rise tower? There is nothing but plants here. There, man, your housing is there in that plant. When I looked closely at it, I looked at the natural format. When that plant grows vertically high, I was amazed to notice that no leaf on top sits on top of another leaf. It always moves out a little bit. The other moves out a little bit. The other moves out. And then it goes on. It's absolutely fascinating to see it. And that's what taught me to move modules of buildings away from each other, not to overcrowd like modern apartments are built one over the other. I call them non-architects, non-buildings, non-nature, but then they're also from nature. No, they are the absurdity of nature that's happening in modern architecture, built spaces here and around. Why can't they subtly change, like that anthill in the beginning of the bird's hive afterwards, or like the tree in the beginning? Why can't each stone speak to us? When we did this management school also, we looked at it and it's what can it teach you? Then we said fusion happens. In fusion, what happens? Can everything start fusing with one another? Like I said, nurture's diversity is there. Then there's the question of bringing them together. What happens at that time? That must, and this is very important to me. At that time, you just keep quiet, look at the tree, look at the flower, look at the animal, look at the bird, and then say, what do I do with you? Like when we did this huge project, which was nothing but sheds of cigarette making sheds. I said, it made cigarettes, it made money. Now it has to transform itself into another avatar. What do I do? I talked to the building in a way of speaking. I talked to the building responded, and then to say, fascinating. Let me change you. Let me have the challenge of changing you. I found you could create a new avatar in that building. That's the change of challenge, which comes from nature. These trees cut just because they were natural trees doesn't mean they have other purposes also. Nature teaches you and says, don't junk me. I will always be useful to you in one form or the other. There is no such thing as waste in nature. This is another thing which keeps hitting me and said, waste in architecture. I said, there is no waste. There is absolutely zero waste in architecture. You can use any material, anytime, anywhere. You just look at it and say, who are you? What are you? You look like a madman sometimes when others observe you and say, what is this mad architect doing here, talking to the stone, talking to the table? Oh, you're not stable. So one little wire on one side, the table became stable. And all the curtains, when they're put together, became a phenomenal acoustical ceiling. They were not intended for it. But the intention happens in the mind. And this is the challenge the architect has or the environmentalist has. The mind should not keep quiet. If it's only in the mind, it dies. Here's where architecture walks in and looks at technology, looks at art, and then says, can I make you into some other avatar? Can I change your pattern? Can I change your lifestyle? Can I change you into something else? Because human beings need and desire space. What's happening is the so-called urbanization is also happening. I start looking at this. I'm glad she quoted Gandhi in the beginning. I promised somebody that I'll give a talk on Gandhi's village neighborhood and future. He was a great thinker. It's a phenomenon that'll come, another way of looking at things. But looking at nature in a very philosophical and practical and architectural environmental way is at the end. Dance halls, these ponds, effluent treatment plants, when they can be modified and done something with, they become something else. It is not dirt. We don't know the approach of wealth or the approach of waste. The moment you look at both and say, who is richer? Is it the dust or the other part? Then you start realizing there is no such thing as dust. There is no such thing as dirtiness or anything. It's a question of what your concept is. What does not belong to something? I was looking the other day, people are calling mud bath, dirty bath. Then I went to one small place here, where is this yoga center or something. Then I found all the women there covered with mud, total with mud, eyes packed with mud, side packed with mud, with lots of cow dung stuck with them. They didn't know the cow dung was also put on them. They were curing. That is their yoga bath. There it becomes wealth. It is not thrown away. It's a question of how nature interacts with you, when, in which context, which complexity. Even when you go to the tribal village and use the Todas space where they've had something else, and today it becomes something else. It becomes an auditorium. The boat was thrown away and it becomes a boardroom. It's a question of an architectural challenge that is accepted in nature. Nature it's very teaching for this. Is why I like the subject saying nature teaches, nature teaches, but it doesn't push you. It doesn't fail you past you. It just smiles at you and goes away. And smiles at you again and said, you took the wrong turn. Go back and take the right turn or take the other turn. Then you find something else it does. But then you said you were thinking right, but you didn't combine it right. When I looked at the stone blocks right behind me here, the stone was lying all over. People said, I have to buy blocks. But the stone said, I'm here. So automatically something happened. Same thing happened to the school and that process. Something keeps exchanging itself. It is, I don't know, we environmentalists, architects, have to get to the people and teach them the process of life, the process of urbanization, which can happen in a natural process. The only time which I find what is not natural is when the mind is driven by pure technology, forgetting the art part of it. And then the mind takes you on to the pure economics part of it. And then the mind is taken away and the pure economics takes over. And when pure economics takes over, something comes one over the other, because economics says repeat and repeat. Like you are repeating the same slides again now and then sometimes. Yeah, it's fun. But the process is very, very important. It must be very understood for the process. So this is the last slide on this. Have I finished my time, or is there any time left for anything else to answer? Tell me, Neelam. I can go on and on. You know me better. You're muted. I can't hear you. Hello. Is there anything else that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Have I taken my full time off? Looks like it.
No, sir. Don't worry.
No, it says 1626 to me. Anyway,
okay. So yeah, some of the questions you have already answered, but I will still have some more.
Please.
You have already shown. We were talking about so many other kinds of natural materials and technologies for a very long time.
Yes.
And never shy of taking huge risks, which you have already shown now and shared with us. But one material that you have extensively worked on is the hollow terracotta block.
Yes.
You have been instrumental in popularizing it and developing highly innovative construction systems to use it. Sorry, I mean to say dance to your tunes, literally.
Okay.
So the roof becomes the wall becomes roof, and it's been going walls to columns to beams and walls. And we are very eager to listen about that material per se, because you have done a very lot of effort and we are all very inspired by the uses that you have done with the hollow terracotta blocks.
Okay. I can tell you, but in a very interesting way, I didn't mention deliberately one material. I thought you would bring me and say, where is your bamboo? I said, 3 or 4 projects there were bamboo projects, but I didn't deliberately kept off from it. I said, let me not take you back into that. Because to me, when I look at bamboo and terracotta, they are part of the process from the earth direct. The bamboo looks, people, when you they look at 6 inches, 3 inches, or whatever it is when they look at it. But when you start looking at it, it keeps talking and talking and talking. It doesn't stop talking at all. Is it a tube? Is it a hollow? Is it cane? What diameter will it grow to? What size will it grow to? What strength is it? And if you neglect it, push, it just collapses and says, sorry, you didn't understand. Same with terracotta block. The terracotta block, if you ask me in a short way, came to me somewhere when I saw it in a burial ground where people were using to bury bodies, using the hollow blocks so that the body won't deteriorate very fast. I looked at the blocks. I said, what is this? No, so this is used only in burial grounds. I went to the burial ground manager. I said, send me some 100 blocks. What is it? Then I looked, if it can insulate a dead body, why couldn't it insulate the live body? Then I checked up. Then I found there was a factory that was closed somewhere in Mangalore or something. I talked to them. Then they supplied, said one idiot architect is there who wants. So next day, 3, 4 or more lorries landed up with all their materials and put, sir, we are shifting to a brick factory. We don't want this material. But when I did a building with that and completed the finish, that managing director came up with a like from there, cannon ore. He said, this you built from my waste material. Next day, he went back to the factory, reopened the factory, got me back all the material. And then years later, when I went with Weinberger to Europe, they looked at my building, they invited me, say, their chairman again said, oh, you can use this in India. So that's how the Weinberger hollow blocks came into this, the terracotta blocks came in here. Then I found Portugal and Spain were using this in a big way. But they were plastering it and cleaning it, which means the very people who made these blocks did not understand the blocks. I understood from the economics point of view. Then I found it a beautiful character, beautiful texture. One thing I had to teach the workers how to work with it. Like when you see the blocks behind me, the blocks of glass also in between. It's a bonding material. It's a phenomenal material, but that doesn't mean I should only stick to terracotta. I stick to me today, I'm looking at steel and meshes and things, thin meshes, which you can't even see. And they become structure. Unbelievable material it is. Something is going to happen. That is part of nature, part of the process. It is only when engineering and technology take over and kill the sense of aesthetics, the sense of art, then nature collapses to another division and then says, you guys are cutting, it's like cutting a tree. Why should you cut a tree unless you want to? Yesterday I wrote a piece, if you want to build the highways, if you talk to the trees and know how to build the highways, you can do phenomenal work. You can even enjoy the tree, live the tree. No, but these people deliberately go where the tree is and cut it because they look at it as economics or something else, as money making something else. This process has to go. Any other questions that, Neelam?
Yes, sir. I mean, um, you have been again using the natural elements, and you showed it in your presentation to design your spaces. And I have been in many one of them. I was in complete awe of the kind of light and the ventilation that was there. And I found them really very healthy feel about them. Could you share how do you achieve it generally, or your views on that?
See, very interesting. Achievement was a different thing. There was a School of Tropical Studies in London. Otto Koenigsberger was part of it. By accident, in my second or third year, I met him in the airport, then made a big study with him. Then I found something happened. They were sitting in London and studying tropical studies. I said, this is very contrasting. No, sir, India is the future. India has a lot of space. The subcontinent is phenomenal. Only you people don't even bother to know what you know, which hit me very hard. Then I started talking with them. Then I wrote almost like a thesis thing. Then they said, the moment you finish school or finish college and think, you will join us for work. You will join us in London. The moment I finished, I said, why should I go to London? I'll practice here. So he flew one day and came back and said, I'm glad you started. You didn't come over there, but practicing what we were preaching as theory. We have so much that we can do in this place. That is one thing about the process of learning, which is again very, very crucial.
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes. So you have been, we have been practicing all this with different materials, which are for which we generally don't get ready labor, as I think most of us are aware. What were the main challenges you faced in your really daredevil kind of a practice that you have?
You're not wrong, Neelam, in asking that question. As I showed you that school when we built, I found the maestries and the engineers they did not understand. But the lady who was carrying the mud pot on her head in the mud and playing, she looked at me and smiled, and she was talking in Telugu, looking at me. I don't know, she was worried, or when nobody was there, she came up to me when she made sure none of the engineers said, sir, you were putting the cow dung. Then she taught me in a very simple way how to mix cow dung with lime and clay and a stone inside. And she made it. I said, here is she should get a Nobel Prize. Whereas all she was allowed to do was carry the thing on her head and dump it on thing. With that is what I made. In fact, the very next week, we told we don't want any of the men in that place. No, I don't want any supervisor. I don't want any engineers. I want only these working women. They will be paid their maestry salaries. And would you believe what really surprised me was they learned something and we learned something. Next month, when I went back, the same ladies are hanging around. Sir, you are going to have a dinner or a lunch or whatever they call in the village with us in the evening or after, whenever you want, evening this way. When I went to the village, they had transformed because now they knew the technology, but didn't know what to make about it. They knew the art. They had built themselves houses. Said, you taught us how to build our house. I said, you taught me how to build the block. No, we now know how to arrange. We need not feel square. It can be a circle. It can be moved. We can make 8 inches block, and we are heavier and stronger. We could lift it higher than you can lift. This is amazing, which means tremendous interaction has to happen from all the level, from the low level to the top level. All the time, that interaction has to happen. That's what scares me when they say we will build. I'm an architecture sitting at home and designing somewhere. I don't know how to do it. I won't even know how to on the button there. That is a big challenge on us. They must go to site. They must work with people who work with them. And the mind and hand should go together. That is nature. That is bamboo. Really works. Steel also works that way.
Yes, sir. So I don't think, I mean, I would stop if it keeps on going. But yeah, you can, one message to the participants from your end.
What are the type of participants we have today? Are they
So
senior
it's a very
architects?
broad spectrum, sir. We have all
to
kind of. Yeah, students, architects, even other people.
I tell you, one
Lots
of
of them, sir.
simple messages that I always believe is, don't be afraid. As long as somebody does not be put, even that happened to me. Luckily, it didn't happen by my arrest. Now, after 40 years, some architect is being arrested because some building collapsed after 40 years. God knows what the neighbor did. That poor fellow is, no, he's 80 years. He's asking, so what do I do? I said, nothing can be done. Keep quiet. The point I would like to, don't be afraid. If you have something in your head, if you have something with your process, I call it, to students, I always say, can you learn to fail by doing your work? Very few students answer me yes. I said, the day you learn to fail doing your 100% work, that is the greatest success you have. Because many times I find students passing. I said, passing is very easy. And if I know the jury, I will get my gold medal. And if I know the award presenter, I'll get my awards. Luckily today, that's the way it has become. That is not the process. The process is no fear. Can you work without fear? I had yesterday, the plywood people came after 40 years, your friend all came here and said, sir, we want to create a new plywood. I said, you are the biggest company. No, we want to learn from you to create another big plywood. True enough. I said, can plywood build structures? Can we make bamboo plywood processor? They were very keen. I said, go, try work on this and let me know what the future of materials are. There is so much that they can learn. The only thing the youngsters should not make a mistake is try to design and build what I, Dean, and you built. They must build something higher, better, superior. Imitating what we are doing and building, and most of them do it, make it clean and neat, make good presentations. They should go to a much higher level, or without fear. I would say go without fear, conquer and be bold. You will achieve many things. Don't worry about who is acknowledging or clapping. Just do it.
Thank you, sir. So you, it seems, had to go for another program. So that's
your
why
friend
we
only
thought
pulling me there.
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but we would be happy. Yeah,
I'll
if
stay
you, we
for
would
some
be
time.
happy if you are there in the program for, yeah, yes, sir.
Don't worry, you go
there
ahead.
could be some questions also
I may
later.
go and come, but
you can address. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir.
Thank you
Yes,
all.
sir.
Your
Okay,
team was
sir.
fantastic putting me
Thank
together.
You, sir. I will.
Oh, Chitra, Tejas, your battalion standing behind. Unbelievable. And your galaxy of fellows whom you brought here. Oh,
thank you.
Great here. Go ahead, have do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah. So, yeah, yes. So I will start with again. That was a inspiring and really, the buildings were really, sir, fantastic. Actually, I mean, it was a treat to the eyes seeing those all those buildings. We move on to architect Sandeep Veermani. Sandeep Veermani is the managing director of Hunarshala Foundation since its creation in 2003. An architect by training, Sandeep has been working on sustainable housing, water conservation, organic farming, renewable energy, nomads living conditions, and natural resource management for the past 25 years. At Hunarshala, he has led work on sustainable post-disaster housing for the poor, involving local artisans and using local materials and technologies. He is also on the board of directors of Sahjeevan, which focuses on commons-based livelihood in Gujarat and is associated with Kutch Navnirman Abhiyan, a collective of 38 rural development organizations covering 650 villages. Established since 16 years in the Kutch region, Sandeep Virmani took profit from his remote and arid desert conditions to gain global holistic understanding on the fields of water harvesting, organic architecture, and all the other uh, you know associated things like sociology and rights defense. He developed projects such as decentralized administrated rights defense regarding industrializations and administered water pumping systems in villages and towns or communities, environmental rights defense regarding industrializations. I'm really sorry about that glitch. Sandeep Virmani designs and guides the Disaster Rehabilitation and Natural Resources Development Program, KNNA, Kutch Navnirman Abhiyan, created in 1998, and which is a network of 27 NGOs of Kutch working on policy, capacity building, and natural resource management programs. So, Sandeep, welcome once again.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
Oh,
yes.
Great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Though I can't see you here, I think.
Can I start?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
So I will read the questions at one time, and then during your presentation, you can answer them. That is better.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So, Sandeep, actually, your practice has a truly lateral approach to architecture design practice. So you can tell us about yourself and the evolution of Hunarshala along the lines of a collaborative practice. And you have worked extensively with rammed earth construction and techniques, and even got it approved for government projects. Tell us about the journey with the material and issues you faced in execution at site and the technical approval by the government. Your work is completely community oriented, and you have been empowering them by reviving several traditional construction uh, methodologies. Could you please also share your experiences about that? It is assumed that practicing with natural materials is only possible for the so-called vernacular buildings. They are unsuitable in the urban context. So we would like to know your views on that. And lastly, today's architectural education seems to be producing a completely different breed of architects. At the same time, we have this green and sustainable movement running around to save the world. Our students are completely confused which way to go. Could you please tell us how you think architectural education should change to face the present challenges? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Neelam. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me along with Dean and Jaisim on this beautiful panel. After that very poetic presentation by Jaisim, I really completely resonated with a lot of things he was talking about, and especially that Telugu woman's story was very interesting, and that is true. Women tend to be much bolder than men, And I can do things without fear, as his message was in the end. And we have found this regularly. And what I am going to do is, because we have just half an hour, so I've organized my presentation in such a way that I can talk to you about one material. And just to give you an idea of the way rurality, when I say rurality, I don't mean the rural as in the physical space, but in the mind. Rurality as the people look at the world in the rural areas. And the way the scientific revolution and the market economy and capitalism has shaped the urban mindset. They are two very different worlds, and yet they are trying to come together and create new interesting directions. And so what Jason was saying was, I completely resonated with that, because when two cultures who think very differently, they come together with respect for one another, then there is creativity. There is tremendous creativity that unfolds. And I can see that all the buildings that Jason has been doing, there was creativity on the site, not on drawing boards and in computers. And that's the way rural India has always worked. And I will take Ramdirt as an example of how we learn and create with one material. But that doesn't mean we have worked only with one material. We have worked with many natural materials. But this will give you an idea of the process that we follow to be able to generate new design. So let me put on my presentation. Yeah, can everybody see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great.
Can make it full screen.
I did, yeah. Okay, so let me start by a few stories which have nothing to do with my work, but finally lead up to that, to it. I was in Bhutan a few years ago, trying to find this bird. It's the white-necked crane that comes from Tibet into Bhutan. It's a very rare bird. And so it was in a remote village that I went to look for this bird. And very early in the morning, at about 5 in the morning, I heard these birds chirping, or not chirping, they have a very different sound. And so I got out, and as I was moving towards the sound, I heard some singing in the mist. And when I went towards that singing, I found people like this. This is not that, this is a different photograph. I didn't take photographs. I didn't have a camera at that time with me. But this is what I found. I found a group of people on top of walls, ramming the wall, making new walls. And there was one lady who was making emadatsi and tea for all of them. There were about 20, 25 of these young men and women who were making this wall at 5 in the morning. So I was very curious, and they had this song, you know, and they were singing and thumping along with that. So the thumping was actually the drum or the beat that they gave themselves as the wall was being built. And so when they all came down to have emadatsi, they invited me also to sit down with them. And I learned that they were all helping this widow make her house. So they were going to work for about 2.5 hours in the morning, from 5 to 7:30, have breakfast with the lady that she had made for them, and then they would go off to on their work. So this was free labor, free service that they were providing to the widow in the house to make her house. Now, the fact that they were making a fantastic, beautiful wall was only incidental to the social construct of actually helping each other make their own homes. And that is what I found very fascinating. So they in Bhutan, of course, make amazing Ramdirt buildings, 2.5, 3 stories high, without any cement or lime stabilization, simply with mud itself. And these are the kind of homes that come up. I want to now take you to another story. This is very much home here in Kutch. This is the grasslands of the Bani region. This is where a lot of pastoral communities who roam with their animals, they live over here. It's a huge, beautiful landscape of 2,500 square meters, full of wildlife, and the pastoralists have learned how to live with this nature and actually contribute to it. Unlike our urban areas where we take away from nature, where we try to control nature, these people have found simple aspects of nature which they use for their own survival and their own living, but in the whole process also contribute to nature and also develop a fantastic economy. So I will share with you that in this landscape, there are these buffalo breeders. These buffaloes go into their grasslands in the middle of the night and graze, because over here during the day it is 45 degrees centigrade temperatures. And the buffaloes will go graze on their own. There is nobody accompanying them. And in the morning they will come and get together at these water points. And these water points is where they all get their water, and then they sit down for the rest of the day to enjoy themselves. These are amazing water points, which we realized after studying them, because these bunny grasslands are completely saline. And these are about 40 water points in the entire grasslands of 2,500 square kilometers, which have given life and allowed human beings, besides nature, to live over here. These ponds, once the ponds dry up, they make these kind of wells called viridas inside the pond. And as they draw water, the salinity cones rise from below, and it becomes saline after a few months. Then they make another one. And in the meantime, the salinity subsides inside these again, and they can return to it. So there is a very interesting practice over here called the abhat. So every well that is made like this is owned by one pastoralist. And so as the summers are coming close, the different pastoralists will call an abhat. So this is an abhat that was called by one person. This person asks everybody to come and help him make his well. So the idea is that if during the year you have had some kind of a fight, some kind of misunderstanding with anybody in your community, it becomes necessary that you will call that person for the abhat. And the story goes that when they call this person, they'll send the eldest from their family to go and invite him. And if the person is very angry for what has happened in the year with him, he will refuse. He will say, no, I'm not coming. And then they say that they the family will send their youngest daughter to go and invite him. And they say that once this little young girl comes and says, Kaka, please come and help us make our well, the person's heart melts and he cannot say no, and he has to come. And so then they all get together and make this amazing well, which is made with the grass and wood from that region. This is the way it is finally completed. They draw water from it. They pour it into a channel, and it comes into this trough, which is also completely made in mud, by the way. And from that, you can see in the corner, there is a pathway where all the buffaloes are waiting. And then the buffaloes come down to drink the water. The buffaloes also know that the trough is made with mud, so they will be very careful when they're drinking the water so that it doesn't break. After that, everybody will get together and make a meal and a biryani together, and they will all eat together. The reason why I'm telling you this story is that the entire process of building in rural areas is interwoven very carefully into the social practice of their region. The process itself is just as important as the well or the house itself. And they have made sure that any fights that they might have had during the year, their ego must be consumed. They must invite that person with whom they have had a fight and then make up during the process of building so that that fight doesn't carry on into the next year. Now, this is extremely important because they have a lot of, they're trying to build a social capital amongst themselves. And it is based on the social capital that they are able to be bold, they are able to be courageous, they're able to take on difficult decisions as a community. In Gujarat, we were trying to convince the government of Gujarat that we must do studies of all the housing typologies of Gujarat to be able to then design the social housing programs under the Indira Awas Yojana and now the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana that is done. And during those studies, we were surprised to find, we found almost 200 different typologies that we documented. And one of them is the rammed earth house. This is done by the Gracia tribal community of North Gujarat. Very few people knew that they are practicing rammed earth as a living practice, even here in Gujarat, even today. They felt that it was only to be found in Ladakh or in Bhutan and not in India anymore. And yet in Gujarat, you found this 500-year-old tradition of making rammed earth homes. So these are the rammed earth homes that they build in the Polo forests in the Aravalli range. They use very simple formworks like this. The practice is that they will remove the topsoil and they'll dig up the soil below that and put water in it and leave that for about 3 or 4 days. And after that, the mud just needs to be carried along with its various stone pieces in it and be put into a formwork like this and be converted into walls like this. So we documented this entire process with them. And then we sat down to redesign it with them. They said we wanted to understand what their aspirations would be, what is it that they would like to change in this house that they make. And we came up with this as a house which the government of Gujarat would agree to support. However, now coming to your question, Neelam, that how do we convince governments to allow them to make rammed earth or even mud houses at all? So a very high-powered technical committee had been put in place, and engineers from IITs and various other places were on this technical committee. And when we shared this with them, they were surprised and they said, no, we are sorry, mud is something we cannot agree to. So we said, why don't we make one with the community and see what happens? So as a sample house, they agreed. And this is the way the whole document, this was the entire documentation process, and this was the sample house that we made with the community. We put in these steel bands because it's an earthquake prone area and to connect the entire house together. And this was the house that was built. But yet the technical committee was saying that, can you supply us data as to tell us as to why this is so strong? Because we showed them houses which are more than 100 years old and were standing perfectly all right. And they said, we understand that this is a strong house, but until and unless we don't understand the science behind why it is so strong, it'll be difficult for us to put our signatures on it. So we went to INTAC. We took a small grant from them because INTAC was keen on documenting living heritages in our country. And then when we studied their sociology, their I won't go into all these different aspects, but we studied their tools, their measurement systems, their proportions, and their materials. So we took the soil, we did the soil analysis, and it was an amazing thing that came out. The soil was made of laterite. These were laterite soils. When Dean talks about laterite stones in his region, in the next presentation, this is the soil that actually becomes stone over a geological period of time. And what they do is that when it is below the earth, it is only ferrous. But when it is exposed to the atmosphere, it combines with the oxygen in the air and starts forming ferrous oxides. So Fe2O3, Fe3O4. And that process of oxidation is called induration. And that process actually starts converting the soil into rock because the ferrous oxides are actually binding agents. So you don't really need to add any lime, you don't need to add any cement to stabilize the soil at all, because the ferrous oxides over a period of 2 or 3 years in the wall itself make it so strong that it can last for hundreds of years. So again, what I'm trying to say is that they have rurality is a process of understanding one secret of nature. And they understood this secret of their soil and then stuck to it. They said, we don't need to do anything else. It's the simplest. So their whole process is trying to do much more with very little. And that happens when you understand nature completely. And so the technology was approved by the government. And we had these artisans come down to Hunarshala, to our office. We brought laterite soils from Kutch as well. So here in this little wall that you can see, the very bright red is the soils that they had brought from their region, and the not so red is from our region. And they made a wall together with us to see that whether we can make rammed earth construction where anywhere there is laterite soils. And this was a big learning which the people, the masons of this region gave us. Unfortunately, these are the very artisans who come to our cities and we treat them like shit. We treat them very badly. We don't even talk to them. As Jason said, that until and unless you're not having a dialogue from top to bottom, you're not going to be able to do any innovations or any creation of new designs. And these are people who otherwise come and work and have so much of tremendous knowledge of not just doing technical work, but also building social capital through technology. And so we convinced some of these young boys to form their own companies and start providing their knowledge, their skills to us in our cities. And until and unless we don't have such artisans, as you were asking, Neelam, it becomes difficult for us to build. And so these companies are now providing services to many architects to achieve their dreams of what they want to achieve in natural materials. He was Ramesh, who now who runs a company called Layers, and he provides rammed earth and soil block technologies to people all over the country. His own turnover is about 20 to 30 crores a year.
Wow.
And this is the kind of buildings that he's helping us do and helping other architects do. This was about 400 homes in rammed earth that we did after the earthquake in the city of Bhuj. Along with him, we have developed various types of formworks to be able to make good rammed earth walls. We now use a lot of industrial waste. This white wall that you see is actually China clay factories, their larigated wastes that are now converted into walls. These are cob walls. So for every material, we have a company who traditionally used to do it, but is now bringing new sensibilities into it. So this thatch roof that you can see is something we learned in Indonesia and Bali from the artisans over there. And it has a life of more than 10 to 15 years. This is a project by Samir Padora, where we helped him with all the artisanal skills. This wall is also rammed earth, but done with fly ash. So once you understand the science behind a technology, you can use any material to be able to create those types of structures. However, we have complicated it. So when we asked these artisans from the Polo forests, and we showed them the way we are doing rammed earth, they said, this is very complicated. We find your ways of doing things complicating something which is very simple. So here we need to modify the soils. These have to be, sometimes you have to add sand into it, sometimes clay, sometimes lime, sometimes something else. We have to have a rigorous testing mechanism before these rammed earth walls can be done. These are wattle and daub walls. So below you have rammed earth, on top we have wattle and daub. This is a project by Professor Chaya with lime plasters on it. These are the rural housing that was done in Ramdirt for the region in Kutch. This is something we learned from these are called shallow domes or cloister domes, which are still practiced in Western Uttar Pradesh, where only about a group of about 40 villages have these highly amazing artisans who can make these walls, these roofs. They're completely made in mud, but flat roofs, so you can build over it, which allows you to save huge in terms of embodied energies in steel and cement. You reduce it by almost 70%. This is a project by where our artisans are helping Loha Fournier in Calcutta. He's a French architect. And you can make these walls like these roofs like this. This is a project in Jodhpur where a lot of very interesting artisans are there. Our entire approach is that you should be able to build within 20 to 50 kilometers by procuring all the skills and materials within 20 to 50 kilometers in your region. India is amazingly rich. Every 20 kilometers, you'll find a new technology, a new innovation, which is based on an understanding of a natural principle in your area. Unfortunately, our students only go and do very little work in the rural areas, and as a result are bereft of not being able to understand this rich heritage, living heritage that we have. Thank you. I'll stop over here. If you have any more questions, we can discuss that. Have I gone over the time?
Yeah, I think you can. You have done most of it. Yeah, one was that the practicing vernacular buildings, the so-called in the urban context, and the architecture education, the two things. You can.
Yeah. So we have a lot of students from many colleges coming. We almost train about 500 to 1,000 students every year in short workshops of 3 to 7 days. And whenever I go and give lectures in colleges, I always ask one question: how many students would want to go into the villages more than they are being able to do today? And 90% will put up their hands. And then I ask a second question: how many students would like to learn to use their own hands and actually during the 5 years of their education make buildings on their own? And all of them put up their hands. And that is something that we must understand, how learning happens. Learning doesn't happen only in the mind. Learning happens when the heart, hands, and the mind, the three come together. When you have an electrician or a plumber, you call him home and you say, can you check what the problem is? He will not start taking out drawings and start reading them. He will start using his hands, seeing where the problem is, and then be able to try out different things to be able to find a solution. So it's very important that, and unfortunately we have become so cerebral in our teaching that we have stopped learning with our own hands. And the heart is very important because that is the energy principle. Until and unless you are not driven about doing something, you can't achieve it. So our entire architectural education is, let me say, bullshit. It really needs to change drastically if we really want to work with natural materials. It's a few of us who have been able to re-educate ourselves in how to make buildings that we are being able to do what we are.
Yeah. Okay, so okay, so about the education, yeah. So okay, thank you for the presentation. So we will come back to you with the audience questions after Dean's presentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So now we come to our next speaker, last but not the least, Dean D'Cruz from Goa. After graduating from Sir J.J. College of Architecture, Mumbai in 1983, Dean joined architect Girardi Kunha as an assistant in Goa in 1985. Enamored by the soft and human scale of Goa's architecture and lifestyle, he decided to stay. In 1986, he became a partner in a firm called Natural Architecture, working on cost-effective housing in a very Laurie Baker approach, using waste building materials and innovative design. In 1994, he expanded the base of design work, taking on small hotels, large houses, and institutional work as principal architect of Dean D'Cruz and Associates. In 2001, he co-founded Mosaic, with general collaboration between disciplines as the core ethic. Having been part of the state level committee for making of the regional plan 2021 for Goa, his current emphasis is on urban interventions, sustainable principles, and conservation. Mosaic strives to provide holistic solutions to its patrons. Mosaic's engagement often transcends the boundaries of project briefs and enters the realms of new experiences. They explore prospects of symbiotic growth of our clients with nature and encourage sustainable practices in architecture as well as industrial products. Mosaic is an award-winning firm that has been practicing a wide range of architecture and product design in and around India. Welcome, Dean.
Hi, everyone.
So, yeah, so I will again, in a similar manner, put all the questions at one time. And during your presentation, you can answer them. If anything is left, then we will take a call in the end. One is that please tell us about your initial inspiration with the masters that you worked with in shaping up your inspiring journey, and how has it evolved over the years of practice? How have you used this concept of localizing the materials in your buildings across the country, combining various techniques? Because yours has been more also of a fusion that you have worked with. All materials have certain limitations depending on the properties of the material. But these limitations also define the character of the building. What do you think are the limitations and opportunities in using natural building materials? Is a hybrid approach better for mainstreaming the approach of natural building? And in today's competitive world, how can an architect be innovative in using the traditional natural materials and still win the client's approval? I think you're a master at it, so we would like to hear. Over to you.
So I'll share my presentation because the presentation itself will answer a lot of these questions.
Yes.
Oops. I know it's jumping. One second.
Go backwards.
Yeah, so the slides are jumping.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, as you mentioned, we started working in a very Laurie Baker style. We were influenced by Baker's work. So this is our office, our first office, where we inherited this building, which just was in very bad shape. So we created a screen wall around the building, which is in this very Baker-like approach of using bricks. And it just let a filtered light into the space. There were no really doors and windows to the place. It was a fairly open pavilion in that sense. So it was influenced by using these, the natural materials that we got around there, especially the local laterite, which is in abundance. So the early buildings which we actually constructed ourselves, because we operated not just as architects, but as contractors as well, and built all the buildings we designed. So we recycled old materials of, doors, windows, floors, roofing systems, whatever we could to create these buildings. But in the process, we also brought on board a number of, building craftspeople and artisans to actually construct. So in this, for example, everything is very little concrete in the building. It's all, arches, walls, domes. Yeah. And over the years, we trained about 150 masons, people who just come in from villages to work in Goa, and got them back their building skills. And we realized how easy it is to actually train them in this process. Yeah. This is a hotel project, which is right on top of a hill, which is very difficult to get actually building materials on top. But it has a large pool. So we actually made the pool by carving out the rock, and that rock became the building material for the structure. So that's the giant pool that it is. And a lot of the rooms actually are brick domes. Yeah. And this dome, which is over 10 meters in diameter, was just constructed in 4 or 5 days. Yeah. So it's actually very simple. There's no concrete in it. It's just mud bricks and mud mortar, of course, with the cement plaster on top. And we realized that actually these traditional materials and traditional construction methods are so simple to recall and very easy to impart to people who want to learn construction techniques. This is another structure on the same premises, which is actually a Nubian vault. It's actually, Nubian vault has one end, which is like a load-bearing end to it, and it leans against the end of the retaining wall or hillside, if you want to. And it's very simple in construction. So we built a whole lot of domes, different sizes, different heights, different flatness to it, and experiment with it. We also try to use materials which are eco-sensitive in a way. So if you're looking at wood, for example, you don't get certified wood in India easily, except in the forest areas, say fallen trees. But coconut wood, for example, which is available through great amounts, great parts of the country, is very sustainable. It lasts a long time, just linseed oil and basic preservative, and you can last 100 years with no problem at all. So these are buildings here where we use coconut wood in its construction. To reduce the amount of any other materials, we make our openings as lightweight as possible. So we can rebate the stone, very light frames, waste glass or China mosaic or things that we can get. We introduce it into the structure. And of course, the laterite stone, which is basically you just take it off from the ground and you build with it locally. So it's available from, just a couple of kilometers away from where you construct. Of course, the usual thing of, IPS floorings. And so this really, it really gives livelihood to the local artisans of the area. You're not taking away the thing by introducing materials which need, contractors or heavy technologies to it. All these are actually easily doable by simple artisans. And a lot of times you actually involve the client in the building process. In this particular house, the owner actually got his act together. He bought all the materials, whatever waste material you could get together, he put it together, and we assembled the structure virtually with very little, almost like labor help, no contractor. So even the kids of the house actually put their hands together. They made, the doors, the old CDs. The scooter handle actually works. You turn the handle and you get water from it. So you can see the recycled skateboard, and so it's also getting the owners of the house to participate. Goa, as has a very unique architecture, which is this nice thick walls and very sort of Portuguese-looking sort of architecture to it. But we felt that the architecture of further south from Kerala was actually more responsive. It was an architecture which was pavilion-like, which was transparent, open, and you actually lived in a semi-open space there. And our architecture generally, pushes that agenda of creating these pavilion-like spaces, creating great ventilation systems where you allow the air to actually flow through the whole place. We've also worked, besides in Goa, in other areas as well. This is in Karnataka. It's the Kannada University in Hampi. And here, of course, the main material is granite. And granite is a great building material. And if you want to use it in a large scale, it's also a challenging building material. So we decided we must use granite for this construction. So the columns that you see there are actually 6 meters tall. by about 60 centimeters by 60 centimeters. And, you know, the contractor of the area said, we can't do this sort of thing. We'd like to do a concrete column. He said, no way. And he said, it's been done 300 years ago. You know, how can you not do it now? You know, and quickly they got their act together. They'd use a bipod and just erected these columns very easily. And we also recall traditional building systems. So that's the plan of building. It's a giant colonnade all around. So whatever we could use, like even a stone roofing system, we use a stone roofing system. The gopurams are actually wind towers that hydrate the air at a high level and then allow the cooled, hydrated air to actually enter. This is the library building, actually, of the university. And that's the structural systems and ventilation systems that you see. This is a project, a monastery for the nuns. Now, it's a cloistered monastery. It means they're not allowed to go outside the building and nobody is allowed to come inside. So obviously we had to do a building that lasts hundreds of years without any maintenance. And the only way you can do that is actually do a full masonry building. So this is actually a full masonry building. But being in Goa, we compromised a bit and actually put in a traditional, you know, roofing system to it to give that anchor of Goa. Working with the government also, we said, you know, we have to have a building which the local people can construct there. So this was a marketplace. So instead of doing that typical new marketplace with all these glass facade and a Lucobon things, we said, let's recall a traditional pavilion style marketplace, which can be built locally by local people. So that's the marketplace we have. We work a lot in eco-sensitive areas. We work in CRZ areas, we work in jungle areas. So we have to be extremely sensitive about what we want to do. So this is in a CRZ area where there was an existing house and we had to add these pavilions which could be dismantled easily. So we use these very lightweight pavilions, of course, recycled wood as far as we could. And of course, there's plywood, which is not that great, but we used it to create a lightweight structure that can be dismantled. So it actually floats above the ground. And to prove that it floats above, we actually even lifted a piece of furniture in it to create a very lightweight pavilion. And we realized actually a temporary architecture is really a great way to go. It's a building which is so low on its environmental footprint. It uses natural materials. So this is for the Taj in Bentota in Sri Lanka. Since we have a product design wing to our office, we're able to prototype the furniture and lighting and everything in the project. We prototypes and get it built on site if necessary. This is for the Taj in Goa. It's another 40-seater restaurant. Again, bamboo, balis, thatch. This cost about 9 lakhs. And being a 40-seater Taj restaurant, it earns a profit of 50,000 rupees a day, which means they've covered the cost of the building in 2 weeks flat. So that's another great, besides an ecological advantage, it's also an economic advantage by actually going and using natural materials, which are temporary in nature, very low cost. So this journey of actually trying to incorporate local craftspeople, local materials and things continues. This is for the Coffee Day people in Bandipur. Again, the stonework and thatch work is done by a local labor. It's a traditional stone method. Even the roofing system is a local stone, the local thatch that's used over there. This is again for the Taj in the jungle. Here, of course, we got the forest wood, which is basically from fallen trees, to create these pavilions in the jungle. In this project in Bandhavgarh, again, it looks like a typical mud hut. So the men of the village actually built these walls. Of course, it's more sophisticated than a normal mud block wall. It's got a double layer with insulation in it because these had to be cooled and air conditioning put inside. Not very ecological, but being a hotel, it needed that sort of level of comfort in it. But we did use the local craft from the area, whatever crafts that we could pick up in the area were used in the construction. So it's a very simple structure with built-in furniture into the space. Again, you can see the local balis and thatch and matting that we get over there. And so these sort of projects continue. We're building around the country, especially in tiger sanctuaries, trying to empower local people and recall their traditional systems, respecting what they have with them, respecting materials that they work with and technologies that they work with. This is in Bhopal, the outskirts of Bhopal, just to the side of the sanctuary. again, a mud structure, but it's meant to be like a village in a way. It's got 30 rooms. The passages are just stone slabs stuck into the ground and ballis and bamboo to connect them. And this comes to our office, which is part of Design Valley, where we all live together in this almost commune-like space. So we have 3 buildings actually, which is the architectural building to one side you see on the left, the product design building on the right, and the design center. So the design center is an outreach space where basically we try and educate people on, issues of creativity, issues of, the potential of creativity to actually address environmental issues, social issues. So this is a common space for a lot of people in the area and in North Goa to come, converge, share their experiences, brainstorm on issues. So in our office complex, we're completely off the grid. So one roof actually, one building grows plants, the other roof runs complete, so provides enough solar power for the other buildings. And the permaculture area, which is a green strip that goes down to a stream, is where we grow our food. We're not completely self-sufficient on food, but we're trying to get as much as we can out of the land to produce. But when you talk about sustainability, so sustainability is not just about, technology and materials. It's also about how you involve, people in actually taking action. So these are our spaces, our office spaces, in which we use them to collaborate, create programs, and it's all about actually bringing people together. And so there are a lot of events that we host, and really try and spread the good word when it comes to getting people to collaborate and to understand the nuances through specialists in the areas, whether it's permaculture, whether it's solar energy, whether it's water harvesting. So how do we actually get these ideas together, share it, and empower local communities in understanding and taking these concepts forward? Yeah. So that's me. So how do I get out of this? Stop share.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. I think that was again another approach that we saw, and thank you so much for showing all these beautiful projects. I think all the 3 speakers have really shown, again, the journeys have very similar messages, but very different kind of journeys in different parts of the country. I mean, one was a composite climate of Bangalore and the area around, and one was in Goa and other areas where you have heavy rain, and another was from Bhuj, and the kind of area which is pretty dry, and then how the local architecture and the traditional architecture has been taken around. From the audience, actually, I think most of the questions were covered. I had covered in my questions what had come earlier, but we have few more questions that I would like to again take. One was that in both of you practices we are doing, you are doing, and getting the execution of the project is always a big challenge, if I am not mistaken. So how do you actually go about it? I mean, how do you actually take it for you and Sandeep both? I would like to hear.
Okay, I'll go first. So really, since we were in construction earlier, a lot of the people that, the masons that we built it have become site supervisors, like even in Sandeep's case. So they've actually empowered them to take it forward. So we use those people in our construction. So it's really good to see them moving on in life and, improving their skills, passing it on to other people, and become a movement in its own right. So I think it's extremely important that we are catalysts as architects in the whole process of, getting a more sensible and sensitive building approach together. Sandeep.
Okay, yeah, Sandeep.
Yeah, we also run a small school for artisans. It's a 1-year residential program where young artisans between the age of 17, 18 and 25 They come in, about 25 students can stay here with us and go through the whole training program. And then after that, we help them set up their own enterprises. We provide them a platform to be able to do initial work. And what we are trying to also do is that share our artisans. One problem that a lot of sustainable architecture people are facing is that they don't share their artisans. Once they have worked with them for a little while on their own projects, they are not very generous with them. And so we wanted to break that. We wanted people to not be limited by the fact that no, you don't have the artisans to do the kind of designs that you're interested in doing. So that is why we have a lot of artisans who can now go to sites and actually build. So and that gives a lot of confidence, because you know that when you are designing something, even the entire design process itself, all our designers after the concept level, the artisans, the master artisans who are part of our teams, sit down with the architects and design all the details.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks. So another question which has been a very recurrent questions with these kind of practices, because the sustainable design practice is always questioned whether we can use these materials in modern buildings or urban buildings. So I would like you to address. Yeah, Sandeep. Yeah.
Me? Okay. No, I think all
Yeah. So I mean,
all three of us have shown a lot of urban buildings, and right now we are doing
yes.
doing about 700 houses, 300 houses, ground plus 2 construction in completely natural materials in Ahmednagar, Maharashtra. So you can do multi-stories. It's a very small site where 300 houses have to come up. It's for a government project actually. So it's certainly possible to use all these you can make handmade, handcrafted buildings even on scale in urban areas.
I think what's happening in Southeast Asia, you see some interesting examples of actually with buildings. So buildings with, say, a concrete frame or a steel frame, and then they infill with natural materials. So whether it's, you know, a mud block wall or some other straw-like material, which goes into things, so that the structure remains really solid and, you know, can last for large number of years. And you change your walling system, the roofing systems whenever you need to. So I think that's an interesting hybrid, especially for urban areas where you're worried about, you know, if it's a large span space or if it's a multi-story space, about the structural integrity of it. So this is one approach where you can actually create structural integrity of it. You plug in the services, and then the rest is really left to craftspeople to intervene into the structure.
Okay. And we have one assistant professor from, you know, Annapurna Kishore Kumar. She wants to know the commercial perspective of natural building materials.
So in all our buildings, they cost the same as they would cost any other building. The only difference is that in a typical urban structure, 70% of the cost goes into materials and 30% goes into labor. In our case, it's the reverse. 70% goes into labor and artisans, because they're all handcrafted, and 30% actually goes into materials because you're locally procuring them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Dean, you have something to say? Add?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really understanding and feeling. I remember, I mean, we worked in Ladakh on a project over there, and you know, we went in an area where basically the winter was coming in soon, and we had to think of a way to construct, because you can't cast concrete in winter over there, so it will crack up. And we had to use the traditional system. So I wasn't at all used to, you know, working in that area. So of course the traditional system is those willow tree, you know, trunks which you get over there. And I went to the yard, and the yard had these willow tree trunks which are like between 3 and 5 meters long, and they just lay them, you know, as a roofing system. and you infill it with a reed or bamboo-like material in between. Now, as an architect, you think, okay, fine, between 3 and 5 meter system, let's do a 4 meter grid, you know? So you cut the longer ones and you waste the smaller ones, whatever. But I said, what if we actually use all from 3 meters to 5 meters? So I just sketched out what possibility is, you know? So actually creating a structure, which is, I don't know if one can see it. So basically that's the structure. That's the plan. So you can use the 3 meter here and the 5 meter there, and you just taper it down here and you flip the grid and you get 5 meter here and the 3 meter here. So if you want a straight line, if you want to twist the building, you can actually put 5 meters here and 3 meters there. So using all the wood over there, you can actually start articulating the building. So building not only all the material, but you also get an interesting, you know, plan going. So that's what I mean by innovation, where you take it beyond the typical thing. So yes, use a traditional system, but can you tweak it a little? So that's, I think, a way that we should, as architects and designers, to take what is normally handed down from generation to generation, and can we actually turn it advantage?
Okay. I think this is another one to Sandeep about rammed earth wall, about this longevity and quality control in rammed earth walls.
So actually all earthen structures, they last probably longer than concrete walls or cement blocks, because the technique it involves, you know, basically clay is used as a binding agent, and the clay and the lime that you put into it. So the initial strength may be provided with a little bit of cement in it, but the long-term strength comes into the building through the chemical reaction that the lime and clay go through with the particles around it. So over a period of a few years, the mud wall actually becomes very, very strong. And that is why we have found cob walls, which, you know, it's difficult to break them even with a bulldozer. We found in all our villages around, if you go, you will find mud structures, rammed earth structures, which are more than 100 years old. I don't think any modern materials can match up to that. Concrete itself doesn't have a life in tropical areas of more than 70 to 80 years.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very, very true about this perception of.
There was an artisan in who does these shallow domes. He said that concrete roofs are very bad as compared to the shallow domes that he makes, because the shallow dome is made with only one material, and whereas the concrete roof has both steel and concrete in it. And finally, both of them, because they behave very differently, they're going to divorce from each other. And that is why the shallow dome structures, you can see 300-year-old, 500-year-old structures still surviving, as compared to, you will never find a concrete structure more that can live that long in a tropical country.
Yeah, I think, that's really actually great. Yes, you are right. And as a matter of fact, there was one more thing which is not in the question, was about the health of a healthy building. So the natural materials generally tend to be, the buildings with natural materials tend to be more healthier. And what is your perspective on that?
So that depends, because, for example, anything that is highly compacted does not breathe anymore. So, for example, rammed earth walls, which are stabilized with cement, actually their climatic properties are just like any other modern material. Whereas a cob wall or a wattle and daub wall, which allows the breathing to happen, has much better insulation properties and can last longer. So what happens in a typical mud wall is that the clay particles, once it starts raining, the clay particles, they expand at the surface and block the pores, and that's why they don't allow the rain to go in. But once it is not raining, they contract allowing the wall to breathe. So all natural materials have the ability of being far more healthier than these artificial materials that we've got.
Yeah, Dean, would you like to add?
Value of natural materials is tremendous, and but I think what's happening today is also like is how can we use waste materials? That's an important factor, because waste is such a big problem all over. So there are industrial processes that now are using waste material in a effective way. So you have these Tetra Pak sheets. You've got, again, walling systems which use a lot of waste material, plastics that are embedded in the thing. Also things that do carbon capture. So there are interesting proposals come on, but they have to be looked at very carefully, because a lot of them are greenwash. So you have to really analyze it, see, if this really works or not. And I think there's also great potential to use waste besides.
Okay. Do you think all these, there are many of these, construction systems happening with this waste, like you have these earth bag constructions with waste, and there are bottles and other things. And they are, at the end of the day, a plastic bottle is a plastic bottle. And if you do a construction with that, what do you think about the longevity and the ambience of the space inside? That would be, according to you.
I mean, in the case of the bottle walls, a lot of them, the bottles are completely locked in. So you don't even know it's a bottle wall. So the aesthetic remains as good as a mud wall, and will probably give you better sort of insulation. But again, the question is what's going to happen after the building use is over? The bottles will still be there. So those are things that we really need to look at carefully. And so, of course, the first thing is how do we stop producing so much waste? And so I think our role as architects need to be knowing these issues. So can we actually be influencers, introducing these other ways, and of course building this as far as possible, try and educate developers and in a more sustainable way of building.
Okay, Sandeep, you would like to add something there?
Sorry, I was diverted by some questions that were asked on the chat room, so I didn't completely hear your question.
Yeah. I think they are telling that in the urban areas, if you don't get these natural materials, what do you do? And if you don't get enough, what do you do? We have a question from, I think,
I think
Albert Abraham.
Yeah, no, I think what Dean said is absolutely right. We in urban areas create so much of waste. We are such a wasteful society primarily. If we can actually learn how to recycle a lot of that, that will be a great step forward. But natural materials are certainly available even in urban areas. And if we are able to also preserve a lot of our environment, USA makes, the Western coast makes completely in wood, because they have a recycling system of using wood. They grow forests to be able to make in wood. So if we set those systems in place in our own urban areas, I'm sure there'll be enough material for us to build with.
Okay, I think the time is up, so I have to wrap up. But really, thank you so much for this, taking out your time and share your valuable experiences with us. Chitra, do we have Architect Jasim still with us, or he has left?
Yeah, he's here. So is here.
Oh, sir, would you like to add the last word? Jasim, sir?
But I think I'll just try ask him to unmute. He's on his iPad. Okay. Yeah.
I'm watching both webinars at the same time. Watch you completely see the film going on the other one screen also. Dean, that was wonderful. It was great listening to all of you quietly watching on the backside of this. Thank you very much. Neelam, wonderful for you having organized everything.
You have to
very much.
Some last
great
word.
Pleasure.
Some last word to all the participants again. Don't be afraid. Yes, yes.
Technology,
Uh,
man, technology. See.
yes. Oh, so you can be at multiple places at the same time. So great. Okay.
Thank you, Neelam. This was a lovely
Yeah.
format. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. So
Being
I will
doing
just,
it.
yeah, just give me a few minutes. I will just wrap up the thing. I thank Professor Dr. Prem Kalra, who is the director of Dalbagh Education Institute, uh, and architect Molly Caprihan, head of the Department of Architecture, Dalbagh Education Institute, and architect Piyush, who is a faculty member from the Department of Architecture, DEI, for partnering us as our institutional partners and co-hosting the session. And I also thank all of you participants for actively participating in the webinar with extreme enthusiasm. But at this point, you really heard a very thoughtful and inspiring work of these three masters. I would like you to I would like to put in a thought in this gathering for your kind consideration. The universal and modern steel and concrete structures have a life much shorter than the buildings made with natural materials. I think as Sandeep Virmani also spoke about it. Natural buildings also have much better insulation and bioclimatic properties than the concrete structures. Building with natural materials are also much healthier than these modern buildings. We go to such buildings and surroundings to heal ourselves, right? Then why are we running away from them and changing unhealthier options by choice? I leave you with this thought to ponder on over the week. Till we see you in the last but not the least webinar of the series, Bamboo, the People's Material, next Friday on 4th September 2020. Till then, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great weekend. And thank you, Jasim sir. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
all so much. And thank you all the participants. Thank you.
Piyush, I think we can end this session. There are about 60 people. Everyone's leaving one by one. Whoever hasn't filled in attendance, please do.
Chitra, I want you to make all the announcements, please. That's why I have stopped recording. But then, and YouTube also can be put off so that you can make the announcements.
Sure. We have the last, this is a 4-part series of the webinar. And we're really happy everyone attended. And we hope to see you next week, which is 4th of September, the final part of the series. Once you attend that, we will be sending you participation certificates as well. So the sign up link is provided on Instagram, the bio, and it's available everywhere. In fact, we'll be sending you emails as well to register. Kindly register for the last part as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And whoever hasn't signed attendance, please do so while you leave. I would one last time share it on this group chat. So it'll be easier for us to track who attended and who didn't. So we can also send in certificates. Yeah, this is part 3. Like I said, part 4 would be next week. We have some really exciting lineup, and the speakers are, ma'am, do you want to say something about the speakers about next week's?
Yeah, so we have architect Mauricio from Milan, Italy, who will be speaking, and he has been doing wonderful work across the world. And we will be having Liu from Inbar International Network for Bamboo and Rattan from Beijing, who she will be sharing her, because Inbar actually works in almost 40 countries, and it has been promoting bamboo and rattan in various construction techniques across the world. So she will be sharing with us about the codes, and she also will be sharing about the community work that they have been doing all across the world. And I will be sharing my, my work with bamboo and other building materials together for the last several years. And this is the they are the main speakers of the webinar. And this will be moderated by Professor Sanjeev Singh, Dean for Planning and Design, School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. He will be moderating the session, who has been doing a lot of workshops and events in rural and regional planning. So that is the lineup for the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chitra. And thanks, Piyush.
Yeah. Piyush, can you share the poll results with us? Is there a file which can be exported? Because we'd be interested to see the poll.
Ma'am,
your voice is echoing.
Hello?
Yeah, Piyush. So the poll results were interesting.
I will leave the session.
Sure, you can leave. We would end this. The poll results, the option just says click on share results. If you could send that to me, that would be helpful for us.
Yes, ma'am. But the attendees will now be viewing the poll result.
That's fine. I mean, but is there any other way that there is no Excel sheet for this? Or?
No, ma'am, no Excel sheet.
Oh, okay. So it's just like a screenshot, is it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's why I sent the screenshot. But you can see the whole numbers are written in the column.
So there are 3 questions. One is, how do you feel today? Why do you decide to attend the event? And how much you like the session, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try and take a screenshot of this.
I have sent you, I think.
That is, I'm not able to see everything in that for some reason. The photo is, I'm not able to see it. Or rather, it's too small.
No, ma'am. If you enlarge it, you can see the whole image.
Okay.
Actually, I have sent it from the laptop only.
Okay, I'll also save a copy.
Yeah.
Should we, one sec. Maybe we should end the session then after this, after I take this.
Yeah, sure.
On a scale of 1 to 66%. How much do you like the... Okay, the stars, the 5 stars. Okay, got it. I was wondering what those stars are. Okay, Piyush, then thanks so much. You can just, I think, disconnect and...
Okay, I'm ending the meeting, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.